Hey guys, Gian from Hospitality here, and today we're going to be, looking at a blog post from the Rentals United blog, and it's about being your own merchant of record, and what are the pros of being your own merchant of record? What is it? The differences between, or I would say misconceptions that different property managers have from being your own merchant of record. And I'm also going to give my thoughts and some cons because I noticed that the blog post doesn't have any cons of being your merchant of record. So, without further ado, let's look into the blog post. All right, guys. So here we are at the blog post. You can see we're at the Rentals United blog, and yeah, they recently put out this blog post. You can see March 30th. I delayed it a little bit to bring it up, but I really wanted to look into it and sort of really set up the intent of why I wanted to make the video. So title of the blog post, as you can see, is Merchant of Record, what every vacation rental property manager needs to know. So what are the benefits of being your own merchant of record? Should you outsource it to your channel? Um, and what's the role of your channel manager in all this? In this article, you'll find out everything you need to know to help you make the right decisions for your business. So you can right off the bat see that Rentals United is capable of being your merchant of record. So it's a way for them to plug their channel management services and a way to also via education be that little, hey, we're a merchant of record as well, so you can use us if we're your channel manager, so we can make your life easier. So that's one of the reasons why they're making this blog post. But it's overall it's pretty good. It's pretty comprehensive, and it details fairly basically what being a merchant of record is. So um, going here, so it's you have the key takeaways of what the blog post is about. So you'll cover what is a merchant of record, what's the difference between merchant of record and payment service provider, which people do get those mixed up fairly a lot, and I'm sorry. So no more. So what are the benefits of being your own merchant of record? Pros of using a channel that is an MOR, like Airbnb. So Airbnb is the merchant of record. So you notice that when you are listing on Airbnb and someone reserves, Airbnb is the one actually paying you, and the guest pays Airbnb. So Airbnb works as the payment processor, works as the transaction facilitator, and also the router of the funds. So that's the merchant on the record of that particular card holder. Essentially, that's what a merchant of record is the person who is responsible for being liable to the cardholder, right? So it's the person liable in case anything goes wrong with the transaction, product, service, good, or whatever. If there's any chargebacks, fraud attempts, or whatever, they're going to claim it to the merchant of record. So, and then the last one here, you see that should your channel manager be your MOR? So here you could right off the bat see what I was telling you, that should your channel manager be your MOR? So this is a plug for Rentals United to be your merchant of record. So let's dive in. So let's start with what is a merchant of record? So the merchant of record is a term used to describe the entity that is authorized and held responsible for selling goods or services to a cardholder and to whom the cardholder owes payment for such goods and services. They process all payments and take on all of the liability related to those transactions, including ensuring payment card industry PCI compliance and accepting refunds and chargebacks. So very simply, I briefly went over this before, starting to starting to discuss what a merchant of record was, or when, before starting reading up on the merchant of record blog post. And also, if you aren't subscribed to the Rentals United blog, it's a pretty good blog. They're pretty good in terms of sending out fairly valuable content on a regular basis. So yeah, I would recommend you to subscribe to the Rentals United blog. You can get a couple of good reads, and this is particularly one of them. And it's aimed at those property managers that don't really know what being a merchant of record is or no. Also, one of the things that I noticed that they didn't add into this particular blog post is, why would you want to be your own merchant of record? So one of the particular reasons is, now if you want to expand into other channels, so for example, there are other channels that tell you that you have to be your merchant of record. So for example, Booking.com or VRBO are two of the other, very popular channels that tell you that you have to be the merchant of record, even though Booking.com has come out with Booking.com payments, and that makes them the merchant of record. And VRBO, I believe, under the HomeAway umbrella, did have HomeAway payments as well. I would have to come back to see if they still have HomeAway payments, but they did have HomeAway payments some time ago. So those would be, maybe some miscellaneous reasons why you would want to be your own merchant of record. But in particular, one of the most enticing reasons why you would want to be your merchant of record is to accept direct bookings. So if you are developing your brand, and let's say you have a fairly strong brand or a fairly niche property that can stand very, very, strongly within your market, then you might be able to effectively market it for direct bookings. And if you are accepting direct bookings, that means that you need a payment processor. And if you're processing payments on your own, then you would have to be your merchant of record. So just for you to have that particular item present when you're just looking at all this. So simply put, a merchant of record is the party that processes and distributes the actual payment for a product or service, right? So property managers can choose to be their own merchant of record or use channels MOR service to take the burden of payment processing and compliance away from those who prefer to spend their in-house resources elsewhere. So for example, Airbnb is the merchant of record. They charge the guests themselves and then deduct their fees and pass the remaining funds onto the property managers, whereas Booking.com and VRBO, the property managers are responsible for charging the guest and collecting payment. So yeah, there you have it. It's the three main examples, since they're I would say the most popular channels out there. So you have then, what is the difference between a merchant of record and the payment service processor? I would say that we can skip this particular part because it's fairly simple. The payment service processor, such as Stripe, you see right here. So it's the one that only facilitates the transfer of funds, right? The one who only facilitates you charging the guest and getting you the funds for that product and service. That the payment processor is not liable for anything related to the product or service, or if there's a dispute that comes back, a chargeback attempt or fraud attempt. They're not liable for any of that. They just facilitate the transaction, and they are facilitating that transaction for the account holder of the payment processor. So let me see if you can have another explanation here. A payment service provider such as Stripe doesn't take on any of the financial or taxation responsibilities of the transactions you make through their gateway. An MOR takes care of all of them. Okay. Yes. Okay. Here you go. So in contrast, a payment service provider only handles the transaction process. the part where money leaves your customer's bank account and arrives in yours. That's the only thing that payment processors do. So here they enter into what are the benefits of being your own merchant of record. So yeah, there are some benefits to being your merchant of record. Um, and particularly, I would say you can reap most of the benefits of being your merchant of record if you are going to accept direct bookings. So if you're going to go the more I would say the more strenuous route, which is establishing a brand, setting up marketing for it, and yada yada yada, everything that goes into uh, setting up a direct booking site. Which, mind you, this is an asterisk. Most property management systems for most PMSs already give you an alternative, like a pre-built website that you can just plug in your existing PMS data into that direct bookings website, and you can share that, and it's free within the PMS parameters if you're paying something for the PMS or anything else. But yeah, most PMS already do that. So I would not advise you to get a developer, develop a WordPress site, and just plug your PMS onto it. I wouldn't advise that. I would just tell you, use the direct booking website that your PMS gives you at the beginning, and then if everything is going great and you see that you can expand and your marketing is very effective and you start getting more and more direct bookings, then I might say, okay, yeah, then develop your own site and start setting up a great tech stack on top of your brand. So here you go. So the benefits of being your own merchant of record is they tell you 3. So you have more control, more flexibility, and better experience for your guests and homeowners. This is not as straightforward as if you're the merchant of record, they're going to have a better experience. Not really. Probably on the homeowner side, if the listing is yours, you'll probably have a better experience because you don't have to wait for the guests to check in to actually get the funds. Um, that's on the financial standpoint, that would be a better experience. But on the guest side, I don't see it being better, either way. So but yeah. So going back to this, being a property manager, not only do you have to pay homeowners, but you also have to have your own costs when money handling is outsourced. That puts your revenue and cash flow in someone else's control. So yeah, essentially that's part of the reason why I was pointing at, well, if you're the owner of the listing, that you get your funds up front and you don't have to wait for them to check in, and or you don't get another another episode like Airbnb's 2020, where during the pandemic fallout, Airbnb just said, oh, refund everyone, right? And then the hosts were like, oh yeah, I'm out of money. So what'll happen when we open back up? I can't survive this. So yeah, that's probably one of the reasons why you would say it's probably a better experience for the homeowners. And if you're managing, you're a property manager, so you're managing for other homeowners. Handling cash requires a lot of control. So I would say if you're having to, get the entire payment and then distribute to your homeowners, please have in mind that you have to have a lot of control, right? In terms of your costs associated to reservations and your regular and your other costs. So yeah, please have that in mind. So in the case that when you do have to distribute the money to the homeowners, if it's a monthly payment or a biweekly payment or whatever, you don't find yourself like, oh wait, I don't have the cash. So yeah, and I've had clients that that's happened before, and it's not pretty. So something to keep in mind. So one of the one of the paragraphs that was really interesting here was if your channel gives you the option to be your own MOR, some channels don't allow it. For instance, Airbnb, this can give you more flexibility. For example, if your homeowners aren't satisfied with the payment schedule and you're using Channel Manager Channel's MOR service, but you can't change it, being your own merchant of record can solve this problem and enables you to put yourself into a position where you can handle the cash flow and decide your own terms and accounting preferences, what works best. Oh, this reads weird. Handle the cash flow and decide on your own terms and accounting preferences what works best. That reads really weird. I don't know if that's correctly written. I'm going to assume it is, and I'm just reading it wrong. But yeah, whatever. So yeah, that was this was interesting because if it all depends on the payment schedule that you have with your homeowners. But again, yeah, I can't stress this enough. You have to be extremely conscious about the cash that you have on hand because you have homeowners that you have to pay. So, if you're going to go into being your own merchant of record, be extremely aware that the homeowners are expecting that cash. So, and I know it may seem like, oh, of course I'm gonna have that cash. That's not my money. That's something that is due to the homeowners. Yeah, of course. But I have seen more often than not that property managers, they use that cash for ongoing expenses, or maybe even they're totally irresponsible and they pay themselves outright or whatever and all that stuff from the company funds, and then suddenly when they are due to those homeowners that they have to send over the ACH to the homeowners, they don't have the cash. So have that in mind and be extremely diligent with that money. Okay, so here, so one of the other pros that they are setting up is that when you're the merchant of record, you can easily recognize mistakes such as credit transposition errors. When you receive a booking, you can reach out to the guest and sort it out quickly and efficiently without going through a third party. So that's if the payment doesn't go through, if something happens that you have to redo the transaction, the payment, or whatever. But yeah, if that in my experience, if that happens, that's more often than not is a booking that is going to cause problems. So it's a booking that, again, and this is my experience. It's again my experience, what has happened to me. So yeah, take it with a grain of salt. But most of the time when something like this happens and the payment doesn't go out, doesn't process in the first try, I am dealing with a fraudulent person. I'm dealing with a person that has a stolen credit card number, or whatever. So you have to have that in mind if you're going to be your merchant of record, and if you also have this particular situation happen to you in whatever instance. So now they're going into the pros of using Channel Manager as the MOR, and this is the plug. Oh no, this is using the channel as the MOR. So yeah, this is explaining why you have Airbnb as the merchant of record. So if you decide to use the channel as the MOR, it's one less thing for you to think about. So many property managers choose to use channel MORs as it offers simplicity and the choice to spend their in-house resources elsewhere, such as marketing and branding. So, and this is currently our case. At the company, we every time that we can, we choose the channel to be the MOR. and the direct booking influx that we receive is very minimal, and it's almost exclusively reserved for repeating guests. So if we've had a guest prior, that has gone through a booking channel such as Airbnb, for example, and that person wants to stay with us again in the future, then that's when we offer the opportunity for a direct booking with us. So we don't really actively advertise our direct booking website yet, since we're still constructing our fraud and chargeback prevention methods. So and we'll talk about those two aspects a little bit now. So well, I'm sorry, after we finish this, but yeah, we're currently doing that, so that's why we don't really offer our direct booking website super actively, and we don't market it a lot. So some channels such as Airbnb don't offer property managers the choice to be their own merchant of record. They take the payment directly from the guest, then pass them on to the property manager. Once the guest has checked in, some property managers prefer this to being their own MOR, as it means they don't have to worry about, and check this out, data and payment compliance. As the MOR, you are in charge of the payment card security and must stay up to date with the data requirements in each location that you sell to. Currency exchange, payment failure rates. So you will have to deal with payments being mistakenly declined as fraudulent. Being mistakenly declined as fraudulent. Well, sometimes it's a mistake and sometimes it's an actual fraudulent attempt. Often causing lost revenue. Payment processor fees. Oh no, this is completely not at all. Airbnb charges the service fee, right? Or in well, Airbnb has two variants of the service fee. I believe they switched over. They're now switching over to a 14% on the host side service fee. So, but for those who are still in the older model, they charge a service fee to the guest on the guest side, and then they charge a service fee on the host side. And that service fee on the host side is 3%. What do you think the 3% is for? 3% is a payment processing fee. So you're not avoiding payment processing fees. You're getting charged to payment processing fees, but it's getting relabeled as another thing. So keep that in mind. Refunds and disputes. You will be liable to pay for any refunds, chargebacks, or payment agreements. So yeah, so you don't have to worry about refunds and disputes. Well, you still have to be worried about refunds, because if Airbnb is very, very, very liberal in terms of refunding your money. So yeah, you still have to be worried about refunds if, in any case, there's a plausible, let's say, or even semi-plausible claim for a refund. But yeah, disputes. Here in disputes, you don't really have to worry about disputes, and we're going to talk about disputes and disputes, chargebacks, and fraudulent attempts in a bit. So yeah, stick around. So, and then sales tax, you will be accountable to tax in the location where your customers are from. So normally, the sales tax for Airbnb looks like the occupancy tax. So Airbnb has a deal with, I would say, most governments or most local governments to charge, retain, and remit the occupancy taxes for their transactions. So probably that's something that you don't have to think about. And also, you don't have to worry about setting up and maintaining the infrastructure and admin needed to be your own merchant of record. Oh, yeah. So setting up and maintaining the infrastructure and admin needed. I'm sorry, guys. Maybe I'm just really bad at reading. An admin needed to be your own merchant of record can quickly amount to a costly investment. In more technology and a larger team, especially as your property management business grows and you receive more customers, more and more issues are likely to arise. By using a channel manager MOR, you can quickly bypass all the hassle. So I would say this would be true if you're a smaller team. You don't want to be your MOR if you have a very small team, and vis-a-vis a very small property management company. But if you're a larger property management company and you have a larger team, and you have the ability to essentially fiscalize all of the aspects of the transaction, effectively, I would say it would make way more sense to be your own MOR if your team is large enough in order to be able to avoid all these mistakes, potential disputes, potential chargeback claims, and all that. So, and yes, this is the plug. So your channel manager be your MOR. This is a plug for Rentals United. So I won't plug Rentals United in this video any more than I have to. So for this one, I'm gonna leave the link for the blog post, in the description of the video, so you can, just read about how a channel manager can be your MOR and what are the pros for that. So the cons, let's talk about some cons that they actually didn't get into. They, glazed through them, but they really didn't go in depth on disputes, chargebacks, and frauds. So one of the things that you have to do is, if you want to be your MOR, well, essentially the first thing, you have to have a payment processing service. So you have to have a Stripe account, or you have to have a credit card swiper at your location. So that's, the first thing. So, and remember that the payment processing provider doesn't really is not a merchant of record. So you still have to take the necessary precautions within that payment processor. So you have to set up your infrastructure in a way that you can avoid chargebacks, avoid fraud, and be able to win disputes. So a dispute is when a customer calls their bank or credit card issuer to say that I don't recognize this transaction, or this transaction was made without my consent, or something like that. I did not receive the product or service that I paid for, within the transaction. So that's a dispute. And then you have to know how the dispute process goes, and you have to be able to present the necessary documentation in order to then be able to win that dispute and not get a chargeback and not get, your funds, abruptly taken out of your account. So that is it. The other one is that if you are getting a chargeback or a fraudulent attempt, or if you just outright, let's start with fraudulent, right? Attempts. So if you suspect that a transaction could be fraudulent, cancel the booking, refund the person outright. You don't want anything to do with that person. So one of the things that you can do that is really simple for detecting, avoiding fraudulent attempts, is to ask for authentication methods for that particular person. So let me give you an example of when a business asks you for an authentication measure when you have a credit card or you're paying with a credit card. So when you go to a brick and mortar store, you go in, you get the product that you want, right? And you set it to the cashier, give it to the cashier, it scans it, and you give your credit card, right? Normally, this isn't done as frequently as it used to be because of the security measures that the credit card issuers are now having, or having in place, the chip, NFC, that sort of thing. But yeah, they normally, when you give your credit card to them, before they swipe it, they ask you for an ID. So that's the first authentication method. They have to make sure that the person giving you the credit card is authorized to make purchases on that credit card. So that's your first authentication method. Second authentication method is, after you complete the transaction, you get a receipt. And there are two receipts that are printed. The first receipt is the merchant copy, and the merchant copy has to be signed by the purchaser, the customer, the client, whoever is purchasing the thing with the credit card. He has to sign that receipt. That's the second authentication method, because in the case that you get a dispute for that particular transaction, you can now give the documentation that, wait, I checked the customer's ID and it was the person, and I also have their signature in this receipt. So their signature in the receipt is an acceptance of this charge for this particular product and service. And they were okay with the amount that was charged, and they were okay with the condition of the product and service. So those are the two authentication methods that you have when you're charging a credit card. So how do you do this as a property manager? So probably what you would want to do is to ask to have a little form that asks your guest for a form of ID, and if you have a rental agreement, for example, that can be either electronically signed or that you send over to the guest and they can return it to you signed, then that's the way that you can set up those two authentication methods, just in case that you get a chargeback or you get a dispute for that particular reservation. Then you could submit that documentation saying, oh, we have a rental agreement that they signed, that they accepted the cancellation policy, or that they knew what they were getting into, and I also have the customer's ID. So you can also go a little step further, and since it's a virtual transaction, you can ask for a picture of the credit card, but be very careful with this, right? Because there are some regions where this is illegal, that you can't not ask for this, given, PCI compliance or other security protocols. This may not be legal in your area, so please brush up on your local government's regulations for this particular step. Don't take this as a suggestion to do this. Just it's very dependent on where you are. So take that with a grain of salt. Not a financial recommendation, not a business recommendation either. So there you go. And yeah, that's basically the video. Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember to follow us on social media, Hospitality5 on Instagram and Hospitality on LinkedIn. Connect with us there as well. So, and we'll see you in the next one.